step by step. Display the partition information to verify that you're on the proper drive. You don't want to fdisk the wrong drive. You're going to nuke the data on it. So maybe you have a data drive and an OS drive. You only want to fdisk the OS drive. It's incredibly painful if you get this wrong. Trust me on that. Display partition information to verify that you're on the proper drive. Okay? And then we want to delete any non-DOS partition. Delete any non-disk operating system partition. So say your drive's carrying something else around that we won't be able to read anyway. That's kind of what they're getting at. Delete extraneous logical drives in the extended MS-DOS partition. So anything extra that you're not using, because if you delete those partitions, now you can free up the space on the drive for when you fdisk it. Now you can use that space. Say it's another 10 terabytes or 10 gigabytes or something. Using fdisk, again, delete the extended partitions, delete the primary DOS partitions, make a partition as the primary partition. So you want to create a primary partition and then set it as active. The primary needs to be active. You can't boot unless it's active. And then reboot the system and format the partition. So you reboot the system, you're going to go back into fdisk and then format the partition. This is what we used to have to do. You do not have to do this kind of stuff today by hand. Okay, so performing a 98 setup. There are two versions of 98, one for upgrades and one for the new installations. An upgrade allows you to maintain settings that already exist under Windows 95. Windows 3X, like 3.1.1, the old version of Windows before, just after DOS 6.2.2, the old command line, black screen only. Or Windows for workgroups, right? So when there was Windows 3.1, and then Windows 3.1.1 was Windows for workgroups. So it had networking capability. A clean install does not upgrade an existing OS. So a clean install will not upgrade. It will nuke what's there, delete it, and then you're going to install fresh, new, and clean. Nothing will be left. The files required for the setup are on the CD-ROM and can be copied to a network location to perform an over-the-network installation. So some considerations for the Windows 98 setup. A CD-ROM drive must be accessible from the DOS prompt. No other configuration or no other applications besides setup can be running. Running setup over a network requires about 170 megabytes of storage on the server. If you perform a new installation, the Windows 98, so what that previous bullet is saying, there's 170 megabytes was the install for Windows. That's pretty small, right? If you perform a new installation, the Windows 98 installation package contains a Windows 98 startup disk. If you run, so it came with a little floppy disk. If you run setup from an upgrade version, it operates only if you run it from a recognized OS. So it has to be one that it knows about. It has to know about the OS to be able to upgrade it, right? Windows 98 setups, command line switches. So the -IF performs a fast setup, like not as much interactive. And then the IH runs a scan disk so you can see the results. The scan disk just kind of check the disk to see what kind of shape it's in. If it's in bad shape, you might want to go ahead and back up the drive and nuke it, right? And start over. You're just going to fdisk it, delete the partitions, recreate them, and format it, and then go off, and you're off to the races. IN does not run the networking setup software, so you can add it later if you wanted it. And then IS skips SanDisk. You better know these for the test. And then IR does not update the master boot record, so it won't be able to boot it. NR skips the registry check. SC the master boot record will stay, like it'll boot from the same OS that it used to boot from, and then 98 will be launched after that. So let's see, the source directory specifies the directory where the Windows 98 setup files will be located. And then the t:temp directory specifies the directory where the setup copies the temporary files that it's going to fetch for the source directory. And you can use one or more of these switches, so you can do /IH, /IN, or space /IN, you know? So they're space delimited. The actual Windows 98 installation process. Installations may vary, but the basic procedure remains the same. Yes, the basic procedure is the same. Setup run ScanDisk first to confirm the disk status unless you override this option.